At exactly 3:13 in the morning, my phone rang.
That shouldn't have been possible, because my mother had been dead for 5 years.
I kept telling myself not to answer it. It had to be a prank or some kind of glitch. But no matter how hard I tried to look away, my hand kept reaching for the phone, as if something wanted me to answer. My thumb touched the screen, and the ringing stopped. I held my breath, waiting for someone to speak. For a few endless seconds, there was nothing but silence. Then I heard slow, shaky breathing on the other end of the line. The breathing suddenly stopped. The silence that followed was even worse. I gripped the phone tighter, too afraid to hang up and too terrified to speak. Then, without warning, a cold whisper slipped through the speaker. My entire body froze. I knew that voice. I had heard it my whole life, and I had buried it 5 years ago. My lips trembled as I whispered, "Mom?" What came next made my blood run cold. I couldn't breathe. My hand flew over my mouth as tears filled my eyes. Every instinct told me to end the call, but I couldn't. Then my mother's voice spoke again, calm and clear. "Lara, don't let them find you." I slowly pulled the phone away from my ear and stared at the screen. The call was still connected, but the timer had stopped moving. My heart pounded as one terrifying thought filled my mind. If my mother was really gone, then who was still on the other end of the line? My hands wouldn't stop shaking as I stared at the screen. The call was still active, but the timer had frozen. Before I could press end, the screen suddenly flickered and a new message appeared. It wasn't a phone notification. It simply read, "They're already inside." A sharp creak echoed through the apartment. My heart nearly stopped as I looked toward my bedroom door. I knew I had locked it before going to bed, but now it was slowly swinging open. Beyond it was nothing but darkness and the terrifying feeling that someone was already inside. I couldn't move. I just stared at the open doorway, waiting for someone or something to step out of the darkness. The apartment was deathly quiet. Then, from somewhere deep in the hallway, I heard a single, slow footstep. Another footstep echoed through the hallway. Then I saw it. A tall figure standing perfectly still in my doorway. It didn't move. It just watched me. My legs gave out beneath me. I slid onto the floor, unable to take my eyes off the figure. It still hadn't moved, but somehow I could feel it watching me. I pushed myself backward across the floor, unable to look away. The figure never took a step, yet somehow it seemed closer than before. My heart screamed that something was terribly wrong. I scrambled backward, my phone slipping from my hand onto the floor. The figure remained perfectly still, but I could feel its eyes locked on me. Then, it slowly raised one arm. Every instinct told me to run. Somehow, I forced myself to my feet. My legs trembled so badly I could barely stand, but I couldn't keep hiding on the floor. My eyes searched the room for anything I could use. My fingers closed around a heavy ceramic vase. I held it tightly, praying I wouldn't have to use it, as the figure continued to stare without moving. The doorway was empty. The figure had vanished without a sound. Clutching the vase, I forced myself forward and peered into the hallway. But there was no one there. The vase slipped from my hands and shattered across the floor. The crash echoed through the apartment, but no footsteps followed. The silence that came afterward felt even more terrifying. I couldn't stay there another second. My survival instincts took over, and I ran for the front door. I didn't care what was waiting outside. Anything was better than whatever was inside that apartment. The cold rain hit my face as I sprinted into the night. I didn't look back. I just kept running, convinced I had finally escaped, until I heard slow footsteps following me through the darkness. I glanced over my shoulder, and my heart nearly stopped. A woman in a long black coat was walking behind me. She wasn't running, yet somehow, no matter how fast I moved, she kept getting closer. I pushed my legs harder, but the sound behind me kept getting closer. When I looked back again, the woman wasn't walking anymore. She was reaching for me, her fingertips only inches from my shoulder. "Lara, come home with me." I spotted my neighbor's front door standing slightly open. Without thinking, I ran inside and slammed it shut behind me. My hands trembled as I turned the lock, praying that whatever had followed me couldn't get in. The front door was unlocked. I didn't stop to think. I grabbed the handle and slipped inside. My heart pounded as I prayed my neighbors were home, because I knew I wasn't alone anymore. A young woman with long white blonde hair rushed toward me, her face filled with concern. "Hey, are you okay?" she asked. I couldn't answer. I was shaking so badly that all I could do was point toward the street outside. I pointed toward the street, struggling to catch my breath. "She was right there. She followed me all the way here," I gasped. The young woman frowned in confusion before slowly turning to look outside. The young woman looked at me, then slowly turned toward the front door. "Stay here," she whispered. My heart pounded as she took a cautious step forward, listening for any sound from outside. The young woman slowly opened the front door and looked out into the rain. The street was completely empty. "There's no one out here," she said quietly. My stomach dropped because I knew what I had seen. The young woman looked back at me with a puzzled expression. "I don't see anyone," she said. I wanted to believe her, but every instinct in my body screamed that whatever had chased me hadn't left. It was simply hiding. She tried to calm me down. "Maybe you're in shock," she said gently. I wanted to believe her, but deep inside, I knew this wasn't fear playing tricks on me. I collapsed onto the couch, trying to steady my breathing. The young woman knelt beside me and handed me a glass of water. My hands were shaking so badly that I wasn't even sure I could hold it. I wrapped my fingers around the glass, desperate to steady my nerves. Then I noticed the water. Tiny ripples spread across the surface, even though my hand had gone completely still. I wasn't shaking anymore, but the water was. Without warning, every light in the house went out. Darkness swallowed the room. A flash of lightning lit the windows. Then a thunderous crash exploded from the second floor. We both froze, staring toward the ceiling, too terrified to move. Neither of us said a word. We switched on our phone flashlights and aimed them toward the staircase. Whatever had made that noise was still somewhere upstairs, and for some reason, it felt like it was waiting for us. With nothing but our phone flashlights, we climbed the stairs one slow step at a time. Every creak beneath our feet echoed through the silent house. The closer we got to the top, the colder the air became. The bedroom looked completely empty until my flashlight landed on the window. It was wide open. The curtains drifted slowly in the cold night air. But this room was on the second floor. So who or what had opened it? I stepped closer to the window and shined my flashlight outside. There was nothing below but darkness. Then I noticed something that made my heart stop. Wet footprints leading away from the window into the bedroom. The footprints weren't leading toward the window. They were leading away from it. As we followed them with our flashlights, they crossed the bedroom floor and disappeared right in the middle of the room. The footprints stopped in the middle of the room. There was nowhere else they could have gone. No hidden door, no closet, nothing. Then my phone vibrated. I looked down and my blood turned to ice. The caller ID read one name: Mom. My hands shook as I answered. For a few seconds, there was only silence. Then I heard the same familiar voice. I couldn't breathe. My neighbor's face suddenly turned pale. She wasn't looking at me anymore. She was staring at something behind my shoulder. The lights suddenly flickered, then blazed back to life. My neighbor's face went completely pale. She looked past me and let out the most terrifying scream I'd ever heard. Before I could turn around to see what she was looking at, everything went black.